Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. Today we're featuring Dr. David Moffet. Dr. Moffet is the creator of the Ultimate Patient Experience, which is a simple set of very specific, common sense patient service steps being used by dentists all over the world to create unique experiences for their patients. These experiences dramatically enhance patient visit values and increase repeat visits. The UPE is Dr. Moffet's secret weapon that allowed him to personally bill $1,826,445 in services in 2011, which was his last year of full-time work, doing 4 days a week, and he only did that for 37 and a half weeks out of the year. The other 15 weeks out of the year, he was traveling the world. So Dr. Moffet has refined and perfected this system over the past 17 years to the point where it's as reliable as a Swiss watch, no matter where you're located or what kind of practice you run. So here's what to expect in today's episode. We're going to learn about designing a customer service experience in your dental practice, how patient loyalty allowed Dr. Moffet to take time off from his practice for 2 to 3 weeks at a time and even survive through a shoulder injury as a clinician, how to know if you have a good patient experience within your dental practice or how to set up one if you're new to practice ownership, how Dr. Moffet's competitors were able to siphon off personal information about his practice and use it against him. You're going to learn about the difference in revenue Dr. Moffet was able to earn by finding the right consultant for his practice rather than the wrong consultant, the very tough decision Dr. Moffet had to make between his family's home and growing his practice. What happened when Dr. Moffet originally tried selling his practice for less than $200,000 that actually created more local competition, and how he went on to end up selling his practice for more than $2.5 million for an additional $2 million in shares. The 6 critical metrics you need to keep growing as a practice owner. Which type of patient to focus on over time to grow a patient pool that results in endless referrals, taking your patients from patient to friend and how it benefits you when times get tough, why you don't want TVs to be in the waiting room and the negative effect that they create, why your patients may be getting the wrong message from your practice, and how to correct it. We're going to learn about matching your message with the patient experience, the importance of creating an environment of service and pleasure, and what your patients will think about doing that, how patients will react and what they'll realize when your message matches your patient's experience in your marketing, and why you don't want to rush your patients out of the door after their appointment. You're also going to learn a few tips that let you know what's best for your patient. We're going to learn the importance of making your core competencies stronger, focusing on those really important areas. We're going to learn about why you shouldn't base your fees on your competitors, what to really base them on, and how to charge 50% more than everybody around you. The one thing Dr. Moffet would do if he were entering the dental field today from a startup perspective, what you should look for when you're bringing on or inheriting new staff members, how to attract patients who treat you as a service instead of a commodity by applying the 80-20 principle. And then at the end of today's show, I've created a cheat sheet based on the advice Dr. Moffet offered during our chat so that you can actually implement the key takeaways. Now be sure to tune in all the way to the end to find out how you can get that for free, along with some freebies from Dr. Moffet that you really don't want to miss. This includes the chance to spend some one-on-one time with him for free. Now, to today's guest interview with Dr. David Moffet. Hello, ambitious dentists. This is Jonathan Van Horn, CPA, ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com, and your host on Starting Your Dental Practice. I have with us today the author of How to Build the Dental Practice of Your Dreams without killing yourself in less than 60 days. A very specific title of a book that whenever I saw it, I said, I have to buy this because I know these conversations are going to come up with the people I'm helping in their practices. Dr. Moffet has a lot of experience. He's the founder of the Ultimate Patient Experience, which has been a blog that I've actually followed for quite a while. He has a lot of really great information on it. And whenever I decided to start doing this interview series, I said, who are some of the best people I could have on this series? And Dr. Moffet's name came up at the top. Luckily, he was available, and he's came on to talk to us today about setting up a dental practice, designing it for a customer service experience, which I feel like is just not talked about enough today in dental practices. So with that, Dr. Moffet, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
Jonathan, good. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm doing fine. As we discussed before, it's Saturday morning. We're in the future here, so good to say that Saturday's just around the corner for you.
Yes. The weekend is here. It's officially past 5 o'clock on a Friday for us doing this. So we are. We've been talking a lot about your health. Talk a little bit more about what's been going on with your shoulder.
Oh well, due to my age, I had some osteoarthritis in my right shoulder. It was preventing me from doing full movement of the shoulder and preventing me from doing important things like hitting a golf ball as it was meant to be hit, and then just little things on top of that. And discussions with surgeons over the years had said that I was delaying the inevitable in having to have the shoulder joint replaced. So I think nearly 5 weeks ago now, I had my right shoulder joint replaced, and I'm just in a little bit of rehab and physical therapy, strengthening the joint back up. It's still 5 weeks into a 26-week journey before it gets back to full strength, and I'm really looking forward to being able to hit golf balls again. But that's something that I haven't done for nearly 2 years now because of this joint. So I'm looking forward to 2016 as being a year of getting back to what I used to do.
Yeah. If it was me playing golf with you, you'd get to see a lot of golf swings, but not a lot of balls being hit, and my shoulder's fine. It's just because I'm not very good at golf. So talk to me a bit about the injury and how it's affected you clinically.
Well, clinically, it just, over the years, it just stopped me from reaching for things, and I had to be a little bit more restrictive. Since I've had the surgery, I obviously can't. It's my mirror holding hand. I can't hold the mirror out, so I've had to stop being a clinician. But I made the decision in December last year to leave my practice that I had sold 7 years before that and continued working on, and to concentrate on coaching and consulting and speaking on a more regular full-time basis. So I've only been working 1 day a week as a clinician, just in one of my friends' offices, just seeing some of my patients there that have found me there. It's 6 or 7 miles from where I used to be, and that's been fine. So I'd already made the decision to wind down clinically, and as you know from reading my book and reading my blogs, the 28 years that I worked in that one location where I owned it and then worked on, I worked it pretty hard and maximized my hourly rate, which is all that we can do, and maximized my efficiencies, but at the same time maximized the turnover and the collections of the practice based on giving the patients an experience that they would keep coming back for.
Absolutely. That was one of the tie-in I was hoping to get to. Was in the book you talked about how a good protocol and a relationship with patients can allow for the ultimate flexibility in your dental practice. And I feel like the injury aspect of being in a physical service, medical profession, is something that is really scary to a lot of people. And I think that in your book, which I obviously encourage every listener, viewer, reader to go and pick up, you talk a lot about how you can actually, if you have created this excellent patient experience, you're going to be able to have a lot of loyalty within practices. So to turn that into a question for the people that are listening, what is a good way for someone who is about to be a new practice owner or who has recently started working in a practice to be able to get this started, to kind of do a systems audit, I guess, to say, do I have a good patient experience?
Well, I guess it's a great question. It's one that I've not really been asked, and I'm thinking on the run here. Most dentists, and I was one, believe that we have to be there all the time for our patients. We have to be available, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Otherwise, our patients will go elsewhere and not wait to see us. And it was interesting, in 1997, I took a month off, and during that time I organised for one of my friends to come and do some locum work for me while I was away. Well, he only came for the first week, and he said, everybody's waiting till you come back. He said, there's nobody here with roaring toothaches. Your work's not failing. And anything that's a small fracture, if they're not in any discomfort, they're happy to wait. And so I realised that I had built this loyalty even back then, after only being in my business for 10 years. And so that then allowed me to realise that I could take time off. People said to me, how do you travel so much? As I was talking to you, I've been to the United States nearly 40 times in the last 7 years, and 2-week journeys, 3-week journeys, even 6-week journeys. People, if you do good dentistry that lasts, it lasts. And if you've got a relationship with your patients that anything that does break, as long as they're not in discomfort or pain, they will wait to see you because they trust you. They know that you give them a better experience. Then they do, and that's a very nice way to be able to practice dentistry.
So I feel like I kind of rushed into tying the book into this interview. So I want to take a step back, because I feel like you have one of the most interesting stories I've heard, and you talk about a lot in the book about how you got started out and how whenever you hired a consultant for the first time, what happened to you. Do you mind sharing that story to kind of pull us back to give a better introduction to you? Because I feel like I did a disservice with that.
Yeah, sure. So what happened was that about 1995, after being in business for 8 years, I'd felt that I'd plateaued. My figures had plateaued for the previous 4 years, and I was getting a little bit disinterested with dentistry, and so I tried to sell my practice. And in so trying to sell my practice, 3 dentists came along and looked at my practice and decided that they were that it was a good opportunity in my town, but the opportunity wasn't my practice, and they set up or purchased another practice in my town. And this became rather frustrating to me to see this happening. And I was trying to sell my practice for $160,000. It was turning over $400,000 in those days. And a friend of mine who worked 30 minutes away and about 30 miles away offered to come and consult with me and allow me to grow the practice again, but at the same time give me a little bit more time to concentrate on outside of dental interests which I'd been developing. And I thought this looked like a good idea. Well, after 6 months of him consulting with me, I found out that he was working as a dentist 900 yards down the road from me at one of my competitors' practices. And so the information that I was sharing with him, he was using that in my competitor's practice against me. And this was quite a disappointing moment. And so I had to dismiss him. I've realized that the problem was not that I had a consultant. The problem was that he was the wrong consultant. And I hired, fortunately for me, the next consultant that I interviewed became the correct consultant. and I employed them, worked with them for 6.5 years, and in that 6.5 years, my collections tripled from the 400,000 to 1.2 million in 2003 when we finished that relationship, and so getting the right advice is very, very important. One of the sad things in that story, though, Jonathan, before we hired the new consultant, we came to a crossroads, and I actually had to come home to my wife, and we had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. We had to sell our house because we needed to take the equity out of the home and put it back into the business to help grow the business again. And that was a tough decision for a non-working, a home wife, to then tell her that I'm removing her from her nest. We're going to go and rent, and we rented for 5 years during that process. So it was a difficult time then, but we got through it with the new consultant. And in 2007, just to tie in the end of my story, a knock on my door at work, or a phone call, and then a dentist and an investor turned up and said, we're looking at doing a roll-up of dental practices and high performing, and we'd like to look at your figures. And they came back to me with a figure that they would purchase my practice for $2.75 million, of which $2.15 million was cash and $600,000 was shares in a company that we thought would never float, so $600,000 worth of paper. The cash was significant, $2.15 million. We thought that was fine. Those of us who participated, I was number 8 or 9. They have over 200 practices now, and then that company was then on-sold partly to an Indian health care company, and then in total the Indians then sold, plus our remaining 70% got rolled into being purchased by a British medical insurer, and so the valueless paper is now been worth just over $2 million in itself.
Wow.
So my practice has gone from being unsellable for $160,000 to 10 years later being sold for what has ended up being over $4 million. And that's, I guess, a nice story.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of sweat in that ROI, though, it sounds like.
Yeah, working hard, obviously, I guess from what I've mentioned about my shoulder, your listeners, your viewers will have worked out that I'm a left-handed dentist. And so when I began working as an associate dentist, I was working as a left-hander in a right-handed world. And that's not ideal. The equipment's around the wrong way. It's not like being an accountant where you just have the mouse on the other side and the pen on the other side. It's, everything's wrong. Everything's set up for a right-handed dentist. And so I realized in my own business that I could not employ right-handed dentists to come and work in my left-handed setups. I needed to maximize my time. And in so maximizing my time and making sure that I got the most out of my time, I worked on a lot of efficiencies. And in doing that, it set me up, I guess, to be very productive in the dentistry I did, but also to make sure that I valued the assets in my business. And the assets in my business were my patients, obviously, and my team. And that's what I concentrated on in building my business, making sure that my patients stayed my patients and that I was continually making sure that we were plugging the leaks. I heard horror stories of dental offices where they would say, I see 100 new patients a month, I see 150 new patients a month, and I'm thinking, where are those patients going? Why are they not staying in the practice? Because if they're staying in the practice, you don't need that many. And ideally, 20 20 to 30 new patients a month is, you can grow a very successful practice on numbers like that. And 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 so I realized that there's something wrong when the back door is wide open and the front door is trying to, you know, fill what's leaking out the back door. And that's how I built my practice, and my practice based on service was making sure that we plugged those leaks so that those patients who came to our practice stayed in our practice because they were just getting an exceptional service.
So I talked to a lot of dentists about the backdoor mentality as well, because we see that also. They spend a ton of money on marketing, external marketing. They get the patients in the door. They may not be the highest quality patients because of what type of message was sent out with the marketing. And then I talked to the doc about their new patient numbers, and they're saying that it's, fantastic. We've had a record-breaking new patient month, and I look at the needle, and it's not moved at all. And 6 months down the road, we don't see any bump. Nothing happens. When I talk to people about that, I typically say, well, do you have a reminder system in place? And I feel like a lot of people are using that as a crutch nowadays, when I would love if there was a way for people to be able to gauge if maybe it's that they just didn't want to come back, right? So if you had somebody that was starting in a new practice, and kind of circling back to the question we started with, let's say it's like a new doc coming into a practice that they've purchased. How could you gauge? Would it be looking at the change in active patients over time? Would that be a big indicator?
Yeah, one of the things that I teach first up in my lectures and when I'm coaching my clients is that we're not only just measuring by dollars in the bank, we're not measuring by net profit, but we do need net profit, of course. But what we do need to measure is patients and numbers of patients and patients in certain categories. So I like to think of the patients that we're trying to keep, maintain, and grow the number is patients who have been coming to the practice regularly and have been coming for longer than 3 years. That's the number that we want to keep growing. Short of 3 years, we still have people who have been coming regularly, but they haven't crossed that 3-year hurdle of true loyalty, and only time will allow that. Then we have a category of patients who have been coming for longer than 3 years but are irregular, and then we have patients who have been coming for less than 3 years that are irregular as well. We have some other patients who were regulars but haven't been in for 3 years, and that's the 5th category. And the 6th category is people who are just irregular and can be long-term as well. And they're not, what we tend to do in the dental profession is we try and resurrect the irregulars as opposed to concentrating on our regulars. And simply, if we can grow the number of long-term regulars through time, so that the short-term regulars become the long-term regulars and the new patients become short-term regulars and then into that long-term regular, then we're growing a patient pool that we know will stand the test of time. These are the people who will come regularly, accept treatment more readily, happy to pay for the treatment, happy to pay a little bit more because they love us, and happy to turn up for their appointments and happy to refer their friends. And when we've got a big number of people doing that, as opposed to people just coming in for the one-off sort of treatments like tooth whitening, Invisalign, even though Invisalign can take a year, 2 years, those patients tend to just be in for Invisalign and then gone. And like you said, if there's no recall recare system, we haven't got a family, we haven't got a pool of long-term customers who, over time, they slip from being customers into a category that we call friends. We're really their friend, and they just come to get their teeth cleaned. We're their friend, and we do some dentistry for them. Not we're their dentist and we're trying to be friendly. And that's the relationship I want to build with my patients, and I try to get my dentist practice clients to build that same relationship, to concentrate on growing that that particular number, because that's your insurance when times turn tough and new patients dry up. You've got your regulars there who will carry you through those difficult economic times.
They're the people that are going to be there whenever you get back from injury, that you're not going to have to
Exactly.
worry about being there, that you're, whenever you have somebody that's a locum tenens coming in, they're going to be saying, I'm just going to wait for my doctor to be there. So, talking about your book, I really wish I could just pick out little pieces of this, but there's literally so many good bits of information in this. It's not a super long book for people listening. I mean, it's a couple hundred pages maybe. But I mean, there was literally times, so I'm a habitual note taker, but I don't take a note unless I feel like I need to. And there were certain times I wanted to take multiple notes per page because I thought there were such good points. Things like, don't have TVs on in the weight room that are on like soap operas, because if you think about what a TV show is trying to do, it is trying to sedate you to get your mind numb so you'll continue to watch in time for advertisers to be there. And that is so smart. I'd never thought about the fact that, when you're at home at night, you want to sit down and just relax and zone out on TV, because that's what TV does to you. So there's little tips like that I wish we could touch on all of them. I think we'd probably be talking about for 6 hours if I were to say every little point, because I'm looking over my notes as we're talking. So let's go. I wanted to throw that in there for the listener to be just another testament to how good your book is. But talking about back to the 3-year patients that love you, people that want to come in, how do you create the environment for those types of patients to exist within a practice?
Well, you've got to set the practice up or establish the practice in a way that it's different from anywhere else. And so what I've done with this book, with my coaching, Jonathan, is that I've looked at the journey of the patient through the practice from the patient's point of view and built our operating procedures based on the patient's point of view, as opposed to building them from the dentist's point of view and the staff's point of view, and then the patient comes in as the third person. Because when we look at it from the patient's point of view, we realize that some of the things that we do, some of the things that we say, although we know what we're doing and what we're saying in our office, may not be said or done in the best manner, that the patient gets the wrong message. They get an incorrect message, they get an inadequate message, they get a distorted message. And so when we look at it from the patient's point of view, we can say things so much better that their visit to our office really is different from going to any other dental office, but also different from going to other businesses even. And that's the relationship we try to foster. You mentioned at the start about some of your accounting clients that they're attracting the wrong sort of patients, and that's very important. In your dental marketing, your marketing has to be congruent with your practice image when they get there, when they call on the phone. If your marketing is budget and you're trying to make it look like you're high class, there's an incongruency there. Similarly, if your marketing is for high quality and care, and when they get to your office, it looks like a bus stop waiting room, they're not going to enjoy that part of the visit either. There's going to be a disconnect. So we made it imperative that the people answering our phones had the same customer service as the image that we were trying to convey, so that when the patient arrived, they got service. They didn't just get a clipboard. We anticipated who they were going to be. We know. In dentistry, we know who is coming in the door. We have a book. We have a schedule. We know that somebody's a new patient. So when there's somebody due that we don't know, if we can greet that person, hello, you must be Mrs. Smith here for your 2 o'clock appointment. My name's Jane. I spoke to you on the phone. Welcome to Active Dental. How's your day been? That's a completely different greeting, because Mrs. Smith's expecting to walk in that door and have to say, hi, I'm Mrs. Smith. I'm here for my 2 o'clock appointment. I've not been here before. So when she gets that greeting where somebody identifies her, she's thinking, wow, this place is different. how's your day been? Not the usual, won't be too long, just take a seat. She's astounded when she's motioned towards a chair in the client lounge, and we talk about it as being a client lounge with being comfortable chairs, coffee table books, that sort of literature on there. We're not filled up with tatty, TMZ magazines and old people magazines that are 5 years old. We're looking at making it look like it's an extension of what they would like. The dentistry they're going to get is an extension of the lifestyle. So they're looking at luxury magazines, Harper's, travel, vacation and food magazines, things like that, luxury car magazines. It creates this environment of service and pleasure. And they think this is a nice place, this is different. Because traditionally, you sit down, and just like the doctor's office, and you think, oh, what's this big pile of People magazine? Where will I start? And they're all torn and old, and they're 5 years old. Or they're the doctor's habits. There was never any golf magazines in my client lounge. There was never any shooting magazines. They weren't important. It was to make it identifiable with the patients. When it's time for the patient to be brought down to the treatment room, we've already established that Mrs. Smith has sat down in chair number 3. She's wearing a red cardigan, and we've gone and informed the dental assistant down the back, so that then when it's time for her to come and get Mrs. Smith, instead of coming to the door and just calling out to a room full of people, Mrs. Smith, she walks straight over to the chair because she's already got the message. She walks straight over to the chair, walks up to Mrs. Smith and says, "Hi, Mrs. Smith, my name's Kyra. I'll be helping Dr. Moffet today. How's your day been?" And Mrs. Smith, she's just bowled over because she's not expecting that sort of greeting. She's expecting the traditional cattle call that she's had at other dental offices. And straight away she realizes that these aren't just random acts of kindness. These are deliberate, sequential acts of kindness that we have done to improve her visit. Lastly, I'll just point out, because you asked me this question, as one which a lot of my established clients have difficulty doing. If you're creating a dental office from scratch, the traditional upstand counter with the dental receptionist sitting on an island in a waiting room full of customers creates scenes back to like Eddie Murphy getting his haircut in Coming to America. The audience participating in his personal life. That's not a very good environment for discussing with patients their treatment, their financial needs when they're departing the office. We had private offices where our receptionists, our front office people could sit across a desk level with the patient in a like a coffee table environment again, like having a coffee, or in a restaurant, eye to eye, and discuss treatment in privacy. And we found that our acceptance of treatment was dramatically improved, and our acceptance of next appointments, our cancellation numbers were down, and our reschedule numbers were down, because these patients formed a bond, a private bond, and were able to discuss things in private on their departure. So you don't want your patients to feel like they've just been up from the chair, out to the front, paid, and then out the door, numb face, what happened to me? I'm a couple of $100 lighter in the pocket and I can't see what's been done. We want it to be part of the journey, that they've had an experience, not just with us as dentists, but with our team. And so it's important in creating this that we have the right facility to do that as well. That's a short version of my answer, Jonathan.
Sure. So, back whenever I was starting my business, I remember my wife went to our dentist, and I feel like her dentist did precisely what you're talking about. When she came in, there's not a screen where somebody opens up the door and shoves you a notebook and says, fill all these forms out and sit over there. It's like you said, it's a very clean, modern place. She felt very welcomed, was asked if she wanted any type of refreshment whenever she got there. Whenever she went in, she enjoyed the entire experience, and she just loves her dentist. I don't think if I tried, I could get her to switch dentists. And I feel like enough there's, especially from my point of view. So I help people with the numbers, right? I help them
Yes.
look at their revenues versus their expenses. And we put them into these little buckets of this percentage should be staff, this should be supplies, labs, et cetera, et cetera. Um, One thing that I've noticed is that in the practices that I walk into that have these outstanding experiences, a lot of the times the numbers seem to get the trends can get bucked. And the reason they can get bucked is because those expense ratios are a lot lower because the revenue is so much higher. Um, what I'm trying to get down to is that if you're a doctor out there and everybody likes to think that they already know what's best, right? Nobody likes to, it's hard to say maybe that my patients or my customers or whatever type of business you run aren't getting the best experience they're getting right now. So if like internally, like maybe I'm not sending my reports to my clients as well as I could, or giving them enough information, or having long enough meeting times. That's something that as a business owner, it's your responsibility to be able to say and look at and say, is this really the best it could be? So I think this is really powerful information for people to be able to really look at the practice and have this intangible increase in their patient base. It's not correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't seem like that's going to be a quick fix. Like it's not like overnight you're going to have everything change. Like, 1 month you do 100,000, the next month you do 200,000. It's a steady growth to your base that will just make your core competencies way stronger. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it certainly doesn't happen overnight. I did not go from doing $400,000 a year to 1.2 million. That took 6.5 years. It didn't double overnight, but as you understand through accounting, small changes now result in big changes down the track.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with investing. And that's what we've got to look at. We've got to measure. There are certain metrics we need to measure. So we do need to measure number of new patients, but we do need to measure the retention factors, and we do need to measure our conversion factors as well. No point getting new patients in if they're not staying. No point getting new patients calling if they're not being converted into appointments. And when we track those numbers and constantly monitor those, then as you said, the needle must change. And if it's not changing, then we've got to look at why it's not changing. And if it's not changing, it's probably because we've not got the experience there to keep all those new patients. So we're I'm imagining in those situations where the needle's not changing, but we've got these record number of new patients, it's the same old experience. The filter at the front is just filtering out more people. They're trying to put more people in, but the same number are coming through. They're not even getting a percentage increase. The true test with a dental practice is that you touched on it, that unfortunately the enemy of great is good enough. So people think, well, I'm doing good enough, and there is an opportunity to be better. And this is the philosophy that we always used to say. My dental practice was not in Beverly Hills. It was not in West Palm Beach. It was a working class part of Sydney where people had average jobs, lived in average houses, drove average cars, earned average incomes. Some of the people that I saw in my practice, I believed my practice was too expensive for them, but it was their priority that we gave them such an experience that they came to our dental practice for their dental treatment. One particular patient, always in my memory, called Russell, was a garbage truck driver and collector, then he
Hmm.
was a postman, then he was a storeman. And every time Russell's name was in our book for his regular hygiene visit, at the morning huddle, I'd say, Russell's in today. Whatever we do for Russell, that's what we should be doing for everybody, because Russell is by far not one of our typical patients. Sure, in any area you can attract people who do have more disposable income than others, but Russell was outside of that parameter. And the thing about Russell's visits was that Russell really felt that he was visiting his friends,
Hmm.
and that's the relationship that we want to have. So back to what I used to tell my staff is, whatever we've done for Russell, that's what we've got to do for everybody else. Whatever we did for Russell today, what can we do better for him next time? What can we do for Mrs. Smith next time to make her visit next time better than it was today? That's the sort of thing that we're trying to, that's the culture that we're trying to create. And like you said, you can't just create a culture overnight. It takes 21 days, they say, to break a habit or to train a habit. But I think it takes a lot longer. But to ingrain it as a culture and build that in your business and in your philosophy, when you've got that, then you really start to see your business jump ahead in leaps and bounds. It's not taking your business to the next level, it's taking your business up 3 or 4 notches every time. And that then allows you to have control of yourself, so your control of your business and control of yourself. I never used to worry what my neighbours charged for their dentistry. I adjusted my fees based on inflationary measures, that I needed to keep my fees increasing on a regular basis annually just to keep up with inflation. What I found was that most dentists don't do that, so they're actually giving themselves a pay cut every year, and that's why most dentists feel that other dentists charge too much, is that they have not kept up with the cost of living. And in so doing, when I left my dental practice, my fees for the dentistry that I charged was sometimes 50% more than my neighbouring dentists. Yet I was very busy.
Hmm.
If my dentistry was bad and my service was bad, I would be out of business. And yet I had a very, very successful business. So people are happy, just in the same way that people are happy to pay for fine dining as opposed to getting pizza every night, and in the same way that people will buy luxury cars as opposed to buy bicycles, they will buy good quality luxury service in dentistry as opposed to basic dentistry. There's an opportunity there for dentists who want to provide that. People do want to get dentistry as a service, not as a commodity.
I completely agree with what you're saying. Um, Before we wrap up, I do want to get one piece of advice from you. I could probably talk to you about this for hours on end. Uh, if you were starting a practice today, what is one thing you think you would probably do that most people wouldn't think of doing?
You mean starting a practice from scratch or purchasing a practice?
Let's say from scratch.
All right. So I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've had is to look at, in any business, be it dentistry or not, is to look at what the majority of people in that community are doing, and then just do the opposite. Because you want to stand out from the crowd. One of the successes I had in marketing my practice was that in the 1990s, when Yellow Pages advertising was deregulated in Australia, I was doing full page ads, and not many dentists were, but I was also doing full page ads full of copy and information as opposed to just pictures and bullet points. I looked at the way things were being done and did them differently, and that's what I did. You've got to have a point of difference, because if you're just the same as everybody else, then you can only be compared on price, and that's a tough market to be in. if you've got a real point of difference, and dentistry is a point of difference. When people stand around at a barbecue, at a cocktail party, at a dinner party, and they're talking about their dentist, they're talking about how they're made to feel at those dental offices. So when they're at a dinner party, they're not talking about, they're not pulling their lips back and showing each other, their 50 micron margins on their dentistry. They're not showing the staining on their cerex. They're not showing the tooth morphology on their crowns. They're talking about how they're being made to feel at the dentist. And you've got to go here. These people treat you like no other business. These people treat you like no other dentist. It's not like going to the dentist when you go here. They are just so nice. That's the point of difference that you need to have. So you look at what other people are doing and do the opposite. Look at surrounding yourself with really good people. You can train anybody to do all the things in dentistry that are needed to be done by auxiliary staff. You can train the dental assistants from scratch. You can train the front office people to work well in a dental office. They don't need to have dental skills, because sometimes people bring bad habits from old places as well. Find nice people, employ nice people who are really people. They've got to be efficient and good at their job. No point having people who are nice people and they can't balance a ledger at the end of the day, or they can't ask people for money. That also makes it difficult. But look for nice people. It's easier to train nice people to what you want to do than to train people who can do what you want to do to be nice. Mm-hmm. And that's the second thing. The third bit of advice, and that's for people who did what I did, and that is buy an existing practice. The advice I received from the person I bought my practice from was simply to, from day one, make it my practice. Work the days that I wanted to work, charge the fees that I needed to charge, and start regularly increasing those fees and thinking about those fees, and not to make the practice somebody else's with me in it. Because he said, if you start working 5-6 days a week, you find it very, very hard to cut that back when your family grows. Work 4 days, have a day off, and set those standards. Don't work evenings and then pull the evenings back, because it upsets people. But just, if people really want to come and see you, they will come and see you because of the service, and they'll make way. And they'll come. If you're open early in the mornings, they'll come early in the mornings. If you're not doing evenings, they'll take time out of their day to come when you're open. And we need to realise that whenever we've got patients saying, can you stay open for me after hours, they're treating us as a commodity and not as a service. And we need to attract, the Pareto principle is the 20% of your clients give you 80% of your returns, and 80% of your clients give you 20% of your returns. Look at your client base in that sort of context as well, and just work out that when somebody's putting a demand on you, are they one of the 80% or the 20%? And if they're one of the 80%, are you turning your back on a 20%er while you're dealing with an 80%er? Because sometimes we do that. Sometimes we start chasing the 80%ers, and the 20%ers say, they don't care about me anymore, and we're losing good quality patients. So it's working with your eyes open and learning from others who have done what you want to do as well. It's finding a mentor and getting the good advice. The best advice, Jonathan, I think that the most successful dental practices can't do it on their own, just like the most successful dental practices can't do it without good financial advice as well. But they also need that. Sometimes they need that extra set of eyes. Dentistry is a really an interesting profession to be in, because it can attract people to come and work for you who are lazy, because there is no supervision. The owner of the business is doing the business with his back to the business. As in traditional business, the manager walks the floor, but he's on the floor and he's in touch with what's going on. In dentistry, he's peddling and he doesn't know what's going on behind him. So having that extra set of eyes, that extra brain to bounce things off is very, very beneficial. The clients that I work with that have hired me, sometimes I'm just there to just corral them into the direction they want to go. They already know. They just need a little push and just a little bit of guidance, and off they go. But without that guidance, there was hesitancy and delay. And that's very, very important. And I think that's what happened with me in 1997 when I hired the second consultant. I knew what I wanted to do. I just needed the correct advice.
The way I tell a lot of people about it is whenever I'm looking for a solution, a lot of the times I know what the solution is, but you want validation. It's almost like you want permission to do the thing that you know needs to be done sometimes. So I think that's great advice. So we've covered a lot of really good information today. If someone wants to know more about you, your story, the patient experience, get more from you, what's a good way for them to be able to contact you?
Well, they can contact me simply. Go to my website, ultimatepatientexperience.com, which at present is my blog site. Over 270 blogs, but they can find me there. But that URL will be converted very shortly in the next couple of weeks to a full functioning website with the blogs on a drop-down page. They can find out. They can contact me directly, david@theupe.com. That's theupe.com. That's an easy way to find me. They can download my special report, Jonathan, ultimatedentalreport.com. That's a 36-page white paper that they can read about how to build the dental practice of your dreams. How to add $100,000 to your turnover without having to purchase fancy new equipment and extra marketing. And for those who like the report and want to find out more, I'm offering a complimentary strategy session. They can fill in a questionnaire at upeapp.com, and from that I can make contact with them and do a 60-minute complimentary strategy session for them. If they want to get my book, the easiest way to get my book, because they can either get it on Amazon, but if they buy it at buildingyourdreampractice.com, there's some audio bonuses as well as a PDF version that they can download straight away as well, and that's a nice easy way of getting my book and getting the bonuses. That's buildingyourdreampractice.com.
Fantastic. And I would urge everyone listening to take him up on, if he's giving away another hour of his time. If you've gotten any value out of this last hour, which I'm sure you have, I'm speaking to the listener now, then imagine what you could do if you were the one asking the questions to Dr. Moffet. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on. We've had a really good time. I think we've probably helped out a lot of people in understanding a little bit more about getting away from the numbers a little bit, because in the end, the numbers obviously are important. What measures is improved, but there's also a human aspect and a patient aspect of this that sometimes I think just gets left behind. So I think that you've done a really good job of explaining ways to actually really consider that for a lot of practices out there. So again, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming on.
Jonathan, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for all those who've watched and listened. And I'd just like to remind you too that although I live down here in Australia, I do have clients that I consult with via Skype and phone in Canada and the USA as well. So anything's possible in this world.
Fantastic. Yeah. Like you said, I have clients in 12 different states. Skype works perfect. We're actually doing this interview through an internet hangout. So anyone out there, that shouldn't be, in today's day and age, that shouldn't be a hesitation. So fantastic. Again, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye. A special thanks to Dr. Moffet for taking the time to spend with us today. So my head was kind of spinning with the numbers and advice that Dr. Moffet threw out there today. I mean, he basically got $5 million for a practice that was doing about $2 million a year. Pretty incredible. So I want you to be able to take action on this advice. I don't want you just to sit there passively with this information that we've been given today. So I know that you're listening now, so you're more than likely not the passive type. So for what I've done for you is I've created a cheat sheet of some of the best information from Dr. Moffet's interview today. So that you can start taking action now. So if you don't own a practice yet, don't worry. What I would do is I would download this information, this cheat sheet, set a calendar reminder for about the time frame for when you're actually going to be a practice owner, and then it'll automatically pop up, remind you of the attachment, and you'll be able to use this information when the time comes. So to get that cheat sheet along with other free resources from today's show, just text the word practice to 33444. That's practice to 33444, or you can visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the US. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.